the Leadership Coaching Group, making personal development the foundation of leadership development. Hi, Richard. Welcome back.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
This feels like deja vu from like 2017 when we first started this thing.
I know, it's been a while, hasn't it?
You came to mind because in a lot of ways you can be a very traditional leader. And then also, to me, in some ways, you're sort of like a free spirit and you have this artistic side and you have this like kind of whimsy in your life.
So I don't want to say at the end of my life, gee, I'm an engineer, or I was a Red Cross mass care chief, or even I was a father, or I was a grandfather. I mean, those are all aspects of a life that's led. But the inner life is just the desire to live as life as purely as we're able to live the life. And so I believe in a moral code that you give back more than you consume. You show more kindness than you receive. You make an effort to do the right thing in as many circumstances as you can. And you work hard to try and do the right thing. So to me, that's how I kind of look at myself. And then everything else that I do is roles that I have chosen, hopefully chosen, not always, which show different aspects of that. But they all kind of reflect, hopefully, in the same way.
It sounds like a lot of presence. You're very present in the way that you come up with that definition. I remember one time when I was, I don't know, like college or high school, you asked me to tell you who I was. And you pushed me to not just say a role of a daughter or whatever my job title was at the time I was working for you, my job title was, or whatever it may be. And at that age, I don't think I had much of an answer to it. I've asked similar questions and have been met with a lot of silence. And sometimes I believe that silence is because they don't have an answer. And other times it's because they do have an answer. And it is the one that they come up with, I think they realize isn't maybe as complete as they would hope for.
Well, I think who are you is one of the central things. And I agree with you. Almost nobody can answer that. And that's because we don't distinguish between the person and the role. It's just like you said, if I'm at a party, right? If I'm at a work party, this is my job. This is who I am. If I'm at home with friends, then this is who I am. This is my place within that group, right? And if I do this, this is where I am. And if I do this, this is where I am. We balance a bunch of roles, and we should be balancing a bunch of roles. But roles only exist for a particular period of time. And they only exist in their present form for a short period of time.
How did you keep a sense of curiosity and wonder and wanting to change and see what's next? Was there something that helped you kind of hang on to that?
My father, who died young, told me when I was a boy, and I always remember this. He said that at some point in your life, you're going to be laying in your deathbed. And what you don't want to have is all of the regrets of everything you intended to do that you never did, which I said ended up being kind of ironic because that happened to him at a young age. I never wanted to be in a position where I held a job for 30 or 40 years and then retired and, went off and played golf for the rest of my life. It just wasn't it. And I guess I've never felt close enough to a job, and I think deliberately so, that I allowed myself to be defined solely in one or two roles. You don't want anybody to say this becomes your life. It might become your occupation. It might become the role that you're fulfilling at this moment. But don't ever let it become your life, because then your life becomes single-faceted. There ought to be dozens and dozens of facets of your life. But we're taught to do that. We're taught to give ourselves up to a kind of an American dream, and I think the American dream is changing, but I think they're still out there, which is you go to college, you find yourself a nice job, you get yourself a nice house, you get yourself a nice car, you go to Starbucks every day, you go and do this. What you're doing is you're selling portions of yourself in trying to fulfill an aspect of your life, which should be no more than an aspect of your life, but you're trying to make it your life.
It serves organizations to have lifelong employees that are kind of, they have to stay on this track. And the question is, does it serve the individual?
So the first thing I would say is, it isn't the fact that you're necessarily in the wrong profession. Is don't ever be in any place that you can't walk away from. Any place that you can't walk away from. You know, I talk to some people and they say, well, but I can't give that up. I mean, I need a new car. I need a Tesla. I need a nice big house. And I need my membership at the health club. And I need all of this. And well, you don't need it. You might want it. And there's nothing wrong with one. But don't ever put yourself in a position where you can't walk away from a situation because of all the little portions of yourself that you've sold over time. You know,
and I think it goes back to having a really good answer about I am, right? And who you are first before, you know, maybe taking the job or the promotion or the, you know, any of the things, maybe even before buying the house or whatever, with every intention of starting with yourself and enjoying the things. You know, if you want the house, enjoy the house, have a cool car, and start with the I am. People will say these totally nebulous things like, well, I want to be happy and successful. Their heart's in the right place, but what do you want? I've talked to some organizations and their mission statements are so big. I'm like, you could hire some pretty bad players to fulfill this role. Are you okay with that? Or do you want to maybe tighten this up a little bit? Because what are you about here? And it's the lack of clarity. And so if we're just saying, well, I want to be happy and I want to be successful, what on earth is that? There's the Conscious Leadership Group took their cut at defining success. And one of the elements that they included in there that I thought was so important was that you have to have delight. And when is the last time that anyone was sat down and said, now, are you making sure to get enough delight out of your day? Like, I mean, that's not a conversation that I don't think anyway, too many of us have had.
You know, I really, really like that because a couple of things. One is it brings some memories back to me, but one of the things that has struck me about the people who have been really successful is that they find opportunities to just do little things in their lives that give them a tremendous amount of joy. When I was with the Red Cross, I mean, one of the things I would do every now and then is I would just go like on a road trip and just go drive and go visit shelters. But when I visited shelters, I would sit down and I was always incognito. And I would just sit down there with some of the old folks who had lost their homes, and we would just start telling stories. But we weren't telling stories about how miserable it was you lost your home. We would tell stories that were just like funnier and funnier and funnier about what it was like growing up, or, you know, things that you remembered from your childhood. And we just like laugh and laugh and laugh and just do that for like 20 minutes, half an hour, man, and just have a great time. But I remember I've known some people who were Secret Service agents, and you know, they would talk about how Clinton would do that and how Obama would do that, and some of the other people, they would just take a few moments and do something spontaneous. I remember I used to go out in American Samoa, and I used to carry a package of cookies, and at the end of every place I visited, I get all the kids around in a semicircle, and I throw the cookies out. There were packages of cookies, so they were already wrapped up. And I'd say, I'm going to throw these in the air, but you have to, if you don't catch them, you can't have them. And so I throw them up in the air. And if little kid, I just throw a little in the air, but, you know, and then they'd catch it and grab it like that. You know, I got it. And they'd laugh and they'd be so happy, because for them, that was it. That was happiness for them. And so if it's happiness for them, it's happiness for you, because you're the giver, right? And 10 minutes of that is enough to get you through the worst day you've ever had in your life. It is. It's enough to get you through the worst day you ever had in your life. So you're right. It's something I hadn't really thought about until now when you talk about this delight.
If we're not careful, we can put ourselves in a position where we don't get a break from all of these ideas about what should be. One of my mentors right now was telling me early on, stop shooting on yourself. Like, you're not doing yourself any favors by shoulding on yourself constantly. If you're saying I should, then it's really disempowering. Instead of I choose to, I can, I get to. And it's such a radical shift. It's not just syntax. When you really say, like, I choose to read this book on career development versus I should be reading this, all of a sudden it changes your relationship with the book. If I should be reading it, I want to pick it up. It gets really heavy. But if I choose to pick it up, I might finish it in a day. And so that intentionality, I think, is important.
I like that a lot. And what I'm thinking about is one of the things you said is don't have just one facet of your life. Just don't have two facets. You'll have a dozen facets of your life. That means if you have a dozen facets of your life, that means that every day you need to spend just a couple minutes on a particular facet. So reading a book on how to, be better at your job, that's good. You're feeding one facet, right? But that's not the only facet. So like you said, you choose to do it. You choose to do it in order to strengthen that facet. But don't forget about the other facets that are out there, right? Don't forget about your physical fitness. Don't forget about your, whatever you love to do, right? And I don't really care. It doesn't matter as long as you love doing it. You can be into lowriders. You can be into football. You can, whatever you want to be into it. But then feed that facet. But don't forget all the other facets. So don't become just one facet. Don't become two facets. Don't become three facets. Keep a dozen facets out there.
Well, it's an important analogy, depending on one's viewpoint of what we are and why we are. But if you do consider yourself to be anything relating to light or even energy, I mean, I think even the most scientific person can acknowledge energy within human systems and cells and whatever else. It doesn't stay still. I mean, if you just watch light throughout the day moving through the living room, it doesn't stay still. It's just not in the nature of light to stay still and just stay shining on one. If that's something that you identify with, then it just makes so much sense. And that stagnation then is kind of a self-betrayal, because we should be moving through, right? And we should be shining through these different facets. And it's energizing, right? I mean, if you have this huge to-do list, there's all of these studies and conversations about how long should you spend on one thing before you change. But the one thing they have in commonality is that you have to change to keep your mind sharp and to keep yourself able to contribute mentally to anything. You have to change it up. You have to. I mean, you're going to burn out too much. You're not going to be fresh. You won't be able to see the mistakes right in front of you because you're too close. So I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it.
I see so many people who don't really have a goal. It's like, okay, I'm working at this level in the company, and so what I need to do is move up to this level. Why? Well, that's what I need to do. More money. And then once I'm here, it's like, well, I'm not really happy. I need to move up to here. I need to move up to here. It's not actually moving me in a direction that's making my life more fulfilled. It's just, I don't know what else to do. And then I decide maybe I want to just be a short order cook at a restaurant. And the problem with that is we don't even think about that very much. And so we give up all the stuff and then we go and do that and say, no, I don't really want to do that either. So I would say, if you look at the question of who am I and what do I want to evolve into, then do it with as much intentionality as you can.
There's a lot to, embracing the different things and also listening to yourself, and then do an after action review and say, like, so why was this fun? Like, what did my stomach and my jaw feel like versus when I'm in a meeting, when everything's kind of tight and tense, and just start to acknowledge, oh, there was more ease. I was able to do that, not easily, but easefully. There's so much that is more, I think, under our control than we realize. And it's empowering and scary all at once, because then we have to take a little responsibility for where we're at. And my answer to that is just be really empowered by it. If you could create the misery, then now just create the joy, see if it works.
Yeah, it will. Takes a little bit of effort.
So what do you think would be your parting words?
Even if you can't answer the question of who you are, continue to ask yourself that question. Or if that question's a little bit hard, try and talk about what you hope to accomplish in your life altogether, and then why. But the answer is through intentionality, little tiny bits. Okay, so that's it, Liz. You got it. That's all I got for you.
That's it. No. Richard, thank you for doing this.
Liz, it's my pleasure.
Bye-bye.